Hello and welcome back to On the Workbench. Today we're going to be doing a coolant flush on an 08 Saab 97X. And so to get started here, let's go through some of the supplies that we're going to need to do this. So first of all, we're going to need enough extra coolant to be able to replace what we're taking out. The system holds just slightly over 16 quarts, so that's about 4 gallons. So we're going to need about 4 gallons of coolant. And as part of the flush process, some folks prefer to use a garden hose. I'm actually preferring to use actual distilled water. I know it's clean and free of impurities. I don't want to get any sort of other impurities into my cooling system. And then I'm going to use some form of a radiator flush. And here's this one from Peak as well. It's made in America, so that's good. On the antifreeze, you want to make sure you get the right kind. There's different colors of this for different vehicle types. So if yours uses green, orange, red, or whatever it is, make sure you check your owner's manual. If you've got a newer General Motors car, it's probably going to use DexCool, and you can look to see that on the label. That if it is DexCool compatible, it will have a DexCool mark on it. Then I'm also going to add to that AC Delco, which is the parts company for General Motors, also provides these coolant system seal tabs that you can dissolve these. We'll talk about these whenever you put them in. But one tab here, you use about 1 tab or 1 gram for every quart. And then I'm also going to mix in, this is from Royal Purple Ice. It's a coolant system additive to help make sure that my cooling system runs clean and clear. A couple other supplies that you're going to need. You're going to need some sort of a low-profile pan. This is small enough that I can slide it underneath my vehicle. And then some sort of bucket or something that you can use to retain the coolant, because we're going to make sure we recycle the coolant properly and responsibly, and we don't just dump it out behind our garage or feed it to the obnoxious neighbor's cat. That'll actually kill a cat. And it's really bad for pets, so don't do that. So we need to be responsible. So the way I'm going to do it today, we're not actually going to jack up the car. This vehicle sits high enough. All right, I'm underneath the vehicle right now, and we're looking at the radiator here, and this is the passenger side of the vehicle here where my hand is. My hand's in a black glove. And then here's our lower radiator hose clamp. We're going to have to remove that because in their infinite wisdom, General Motors did not provide a petcock here to actually drain the radiator. Kind of dumb, but I suppose that eliminates a point of failure. There's nothing we can do about it, so the way that we're going to be able to drain the coolant out here is we're going to actually have to compress this little hose clamp here to remove the hose and then have that drain out. So now I've got my pan here, and I'll go down into the pan and make sure your pan holds enough so you're able to capture all the coolant. So I'm going to use a pair of hose clamp pliers. So whenever you saw the fluid come gushing out the bottom, one of the things that helps to increase that is to actually remove the radiator cap. So you get the air pressure pushing the air down through the radiator and then out through the lower hose into the bucket underneath. If you were watching carefully, there should have been more coolant that came out than it did. And you can see one of the other sources of that is in the coolant reservoir back here. And you can see there's still definitely some down there. So I'm going to use a turkey baster to get that out and just put that right into my bucket. There's still going to be a little bit left back on the heater core that I'm not going to be able to get out. That's fine. I'd love to be able to evacuate 100% of it, but that's just almost difficult. But that's why we're going to do a flush procedure. And so now, using the turkey baster to get the rest of the coolant out. So now with my coolant all the way out, I've continued to repeat that. I'm going to go ahead and seal up the bottom, and then we're going to refill this with our flush. So now back under the car to seal it up in the process that you saw before in reverse. After draining the coolant out, the next thing I'm going to do is I've attached my Lyle spill-free funnel. I've got another video about that on my YouTube channel. And I'm going to add the super flush and distilled water into the radiator. I also went back and topped off the bottle up here, up top. And so screw that lid back on. I actually need to clean those threads. Slip the line. I'm also going to continue my Lyle spill-free funnel. And so then I can make sure I've got enough coolant in there. And so there's still a little bit of residual coolant. To help with that, the clean, purified distilled water and the super flush, or the super cleaner from Peak, in there to help cool the engine. We'll just bring it up to temperature, and then we'll shut it down and let the engine cool. So now, time to turn on the vehicle and open the garage door. Again, make sure your garage door is open so you don't accidentally fumigate yourself. After getting the radiator topped off with distilled water and the reservoir tank also filled to the line with distilled water, I've taken this out for a drive, warmed the engine up to full temperature, made sure it didn't get too hot, drove it around, had the heater on full blast, opened up the heater core, and opened the thermostat to a complete cycle. And now the next thing is to drain out to actually drain out the water again before we refill it with the coolant. So we're going to have to open up our radiator again and drain it out from the bottom, just like we did with our original coolant. And I'm going to treat this bit of waste, just like I treated the other waste, and put it into my waste bucket. Of coolant. So now, under the car again, and hopefully you'll be able to see what this looks like coming out once I pop open the hose clamp. Here's the results of what came out of the vehicle after just a single filling with distilled water. You can see there's definitely a little hue of the Dexcool that's in there. I'm not seeing any major deterioration or other problems. So I'm going to go ahead and pour this into my waste bucket, and then we'll proceed with the fill. I've already replaced the lower radiator hose. If you look at what's left in the pan, you can see this was clean to start with. There's a little bit of sludge that we got out. Not much, so overall I think my system health is pretty good. Now that I've got all the coolant out, I'm going to take my bucket here, waste coolant, and label it. And so I clearly know that's the waste because I'm going to use a second bucket here. And I'm going to go ahead and put my coolant and the additives for the coolant that I want, my purple ice, into this bucket. I'll have all my coolant in one place, and I'm not going jug to jug, and it'll already be mixed up in a clean bucket. Very important, clean bucket, dirty bucket, clean bucket, dirty bucket. Now with the radiator full, and you saw how I used the funnel to transport to be able to load coolant into the reservoir bottle. I'm going to open my garage door, start the engine up, and I've got plenty of coolant in the funnel. So then as the engine sucks it in, I turn the heater on. It'll be right there and available for the engine to be able to start to consume. After you've ran the engine, got it all the way up to temperature, and you've let the coolant drain in, this engine's capacity, and looking at the manual, is 11.2 quarts, and you get it all the way in. We'll put the radiator cap back on. Then you want to monitor it for another day or two, just to make sure you got everything accounted for, especially if you end up a little bit short. and then you're good to go. Total time from start to end on this job is probably about hour and a half or so, give or take, because some of that time is going to be spent actually letting the engine cool down after you rev it up and get up to working temperature before it's comfortable and safe to work on. So if it's time to do an engine coolant change on your Trailblazer, Saab 97X, Buick Ranier, Oldsmobile Bravada, or Isuzu Ascender, hope you found this video useful, and have a great day. Bye.